Alright, so today I am going to do a portrait tutorial where I walk you through the steps of how to draw a proportional human face. And you don't need a lot for this lesson. What you need is a piece of paper. I'm just using a regular sketchbook paper, a pencil with an eraser. You could use a ruler, but I don't want people to get caught up in measuring things. As much as I would prefer that you understand the idea of proportions of, let's say, taking a line, here's a line, and then being able to divide it in half, and then yourself seeing and figuring out, is that side exactly the same as that side? So that is a skill as far as comparing two lengths that will help you more than measurement. I do have a copy of this worksheet, and there is an image over here. This is what I use once we find the correct position and size of the facial features. I like to use this to just help draw simple eyes, nose, and mouth. So today we're not drawing anybody in particular, we're just drawing a face. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with an oval. So I do this really lightly, and I want to make sure that any of the lines that I'm drawing I could easily erase. So how large do I want to draw this? I want to draw this a little bit bigger than my hand, or if I could imagine about life size. And I am using more of a motion from my shoulder. If you can see where I'm holding my pencil, I'm holding it a little bit farther back. Now, some people like to start this process off with a circle. So again, a circle is not the easiest thing to draw, but I'm doing it very lightly. So I'm going to draw a circle, and then they will drop down what would be the chin. So if that helps you draw a oval a little bit better, you can do that. So back to my oval. The next thing I'm going to do, oftentimes people will divide the face in half using a vertical line. I actually don't like to do that. And the reason is when we get to the point where we draw the eyes, I think it can be a little bit of a distraction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find halfway down, and I'm going to draw an eye line. So I'm not measuring. Like, I can measure if you're very new to this process and you want to measure, you feel confident with a ruler, you can. But what I'm doing is I am comparing the top portion with the bottom portion. So I can do that with my fingers, just make sure I'm not moving them. The other thing is I can use my pencil. So I can take the top of my pencil, put it up there, and then with my fingers mark where the halfway line is and then move it down. So I see that my line is a little bit above halfway, so I'm going to erase it, or I'm just going to kind of nudge it downwards a little bit so it's more halfway. So at this point, I do like my students to label this drawing because it is going to be kind of your map. I call this face mapping, or your guide when you do an actual self-portrait. So this is the eye line. Most beginning students will place the eye line very far up, but it truly is in the middle of your skull. Now there's going to be some hair up here, but between the very top of your head and your eyes, that is halfway. So I'm going to do another horizontal line. I'm going to take my halfway line here and my chin, and I'm going to draw in another horizontal line. Now this one can extend all the way across, it really doesn't need to, but again, this is going to be labeled, and I'm going to put the nose line. So this is where the very bottom of your nose is. So if we look at this photograph, that would be the spot where your nose would be. And then I use another line, horizontal line. So there's two different ways to find this. One way is to do 1/3 of the distance between the nose line and the chin. So some people have a hard time estimating thirds. So if you don't want to do that, you can find where halfway is. And this is going to be the mouth. So if you're going to use your thirds line, that is actually going to be the line in between your two lips. If you're using the half line, that's going to be the bottom lip. So I'm going to put that there. And I have my horizontal lines ready. So this is the mouth line. So once you get your eye line in place, you're estimating and figuring out where about halfway is. The next key part of this is figuring out what size is the eye compared to the width of the head. So this is basically 5 eye widths, 5 eyes end to end could fit together on this eye line. So that is pretty tricky to do, to divide this line into 5 equal spaces. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start placing some lines, and I'm going to draw them so that I'm thinking about 5 eyes that would fit across here that are all about the same size. So, and I'm going to play with those lines a little bit, nudge them until I feel like it is where it needs to be. The other thing I'm going to do is I can measure. So I'm going to take my eraser and put my fingers there, and then I compare it to this one. That's about the same. This one's about the same. That one's smaller. So I need to move. And again, sometimes I have taught this where we use a ruler, we figure out what that measurement is, but I think it is more helpful for you to start to figure out, to visualize and be able to compare these shapes and spaces. All right, so that is the width of my eye. My eye is going to be about that length. They are about the same. I can fit 1 equal eye length in between 2 eyes. And that's really the key. The other thing that I see happening with students, that this space is either too short in between here or it's too far apart. What we need to remember is that the thing we're doing today, the portrait tutorial, this is based on generic proportions in general. Now, when you go to look at your own self-portrait and draw yourself, you're going to notice things like my eyes are a little bit closer than 1 eye length, or my eyes are a little bit farther. But for today, this is just a generic portrait. It could be any person. It's the general proportions of the human face. So I'm going to go ahead and draw an eye in this space to the left and right, and that's where I'm going to go ahead and reference these different ways to make eyes. I always like to look at photographs. So the first thing is I do start off with what is kind of considered a football shape. So I have a hill line and a gentle small smile line. Here what I want to note is that the height of the eye. The height of the eye is proportional to the length of the eye. So what happens is that usually half of the eye length, so if I look at my pencil and measure right here, that, if I turn it vertical, is generally the height of my eye. So a common mistake people will do is they'll either make them too, I guess, not tall enough, or they make these big, giant, rounded eye shapes. So it's going to be halfway between those two. What I like you to do is to look at a photograph, and we look at these different parts of the eye. So I have that upper eyelid and lower eyelid, but it's really not good enough yet. What I want you to look at is the inner corner of the eye. It has this rounded and very acute angle. I call this a very technical term. It's called the eye booger catcher. So the eye booger catcher in there, what I would do is I would extend this just a little bit, or I guess make that a little bit of a more sharp angle. And there I have my eye booger catcher. And then the outer part of the eye, I just keep to be the angle that I drew. Next thing I want you to notice is the iris. When we are looking at a person just straight on and their eyes are relaxed, we can't see this whole circle, even though we know that is a whole circle. So when you draw in the iris, which is the color part of your eye, I have it touch the bottom eyelid line. And if I were to continue it, you can see it gets covered by that upper eye line. So another thing with that eye booger catcher, I usually draw a little line, curved line. That kind of just indicates that that fleshy part is in there, but it's not the white of the eye. So from here, my iris, I am going to draw my pupil. So the pupil is the black part of your eye, and it's actually a hole. So it's a circle. If you draw it too tiny, it looks like they have, pinpoint pupils. Like it would indicate it's very bright in the room. If we draw this too large, it looks like it's in a very dark room. So the next thing I'm going to do is that the crease of your eyelid. Now again, this is assuming a Caucasian. So these change and they're so different for different people. Sometimes you can't even see this crease. So on this generic one, if you want to include it, you can. It's going to be something that when you look in the mirror at your own eye, you're going to notice if you can see this crease and where it is. Is it very high above or below? But today I'm just going to draw it just a little bit above there. And the next thing is eyebrows. So for eyebrows, what I want you to notice, if I drew an angle here and here, it is usually the arch is farther away and the inner part is closer to that upper eyelid. So I don't draw every single hair. I draw it really lightly. And as you kind of noticed, these little angled lines tell me where it starts and where it ends. So again, eyebrows, so many different eyebrows for so many different people. So this is in general. How far above your eye is your eyebrow? Again, changes with person to person, but in general, one eye height, if I use that, that is going to be where I place my eyebrow. So I have an eye. I have noticed the iris, that I don't see the whole iris. I have my eye booger catcher. I have the crease above my eyelid. I have just the shape for the eyebrow because we just kind of want to place where it is. And then eyelashes. Now, eyelashes, it's something I draw really, really lightly. If you don't draw them really lightly, then it's going to look like you've got false eyelashes. So we will go into this more in depth when we draw your self-portrait, but what I want you to do for your eyelashes is if you're looking at your eye, here it is, and then the crease, the one that we've drawn. So there is this eyelid or the lip of your eye here, and then your eyelid or your eyelashes, they actually like grow straight out and then they go out and then they curve. So I will draw them something like this, and then what happens is that as the eyelash goes out to the outer part, then it actually kind of lays down. So these ones, like a clock, are pointing up till 12, and then these ones over here are now pointing towards 3 o'clock. So there is a little bit of a change in that, the direction. So eyelashes, usually the darker you draw these and the longer, it's like the more feminine. Some people have more straight eyelashes, some people have more curved. And then usually for the bottom, I just draw just a few. All right, so we're at a very difficult part. The very difficult part is we have drawn an eye, eyelid, lashes, and an eyebrow, and now we need to draw one over here. It's very common for students to get frustrated at this point and be like, I can't draw this one exactly like that one. You do not have to. Nobody has a perfectly symmetrical face. So I just want to encourage you, to draw lightly so you can get as close to a mirror image to this eye over here. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. I'm going to draw that eye, and then we will continue. So you're going to go ahead and start to draw what would be a pretty good mirror image of the eye that you have drawn. All right, so I have my other eye. No, it's not a perfect mirror image, but it's pretty close, and I know my eyes are proportional to the rest of the head. I know that because if I check the length of the eye and then the space in between, they are all equal. And then even if I check on the outside of that eye, that is also even. So I know it feels like a bald alien right now, and you're like, there's no way there's this much head space up here. My eyes need to be up higher. Please just go along with the process. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to draw the nose. So we already have the spot where the ball of our nose or the tip of the nose will be. And so to figure out the width of the nose, what I'm going to do is I am going to draw lines straight down. Again, I'm drawing lightly. Now, you don't want to draw so light that you can't see them, but if this were a final drawing, I would be drawing a lot lighter. So what I'm going to look at here is this photograph. If I take the inside corner of my eye and I draw straight down, you can see that is where the outside part of the nostrils are. So there's different ways to draw noses, but what I like to think about is the ball of the nose, and then almost like two little, a C and then a backward C. This shows different ways. Noses, again, are so very different. One way asks you to draw the ball of the nose and then two little circles on each side, and then just use that as a guide for the bottom, that bottom line. I like this one. This is basically for the ball of the nose, I draw a smile line, but then for the two nostrils, I use parentheses, basically. For the bridge of the nose, it's really best, there's so much subtle shading, it's really just best to not draw in those lines. What happens is it ends up looking like a tree trunk. It looks really awkward. So if you draw those in, I draw them really lightly. So with this as my guide, choose a method. I am going to start with the smile line. And noticing I'm making that pretty wide. I'm not making a teeny tiny one, although there is a wide variety of noses. And then out here, I'm going to do those parentheses. This is, again, in general. So if we look at different people, we can see sometimes that their noses are wider than the inside corners of their eyes, or that they're in and they're thinner. Sometimes noses are longer, sometimes they're shorter. This is also assuming we're looking straight at the person, kind of like a mugshot. So that's my basic outline for the nose. The other thing I like to do is to add nostrils down here. So really it's like a sideways raindrop. And sometimes I will make this a little thinner. And then from this parentheses, if I just curve it up and then just really light lines. So I went through that really quickly. Noses are difficult to draw. I recommend using some of these techniques to practice. You can always practice on like another page before you draw it on here. But the important thing is that your nose is the width of the inner corner of your eyes. And that again is just a general or a generic proportion. All right, the next set of lines we're going to draw, vertical lines, are going to be from the pupils. So go ahead and bring vertical lines straight down. And this is going to be where the corners of your mouth are. If you used the 1/3 guideline here, this is going to act as the line in between your upper and lower lip. If you are using the 1/2 line, this is going to be your bottom lip. So if we look at this mouth right here, what I want you to pay attention to, and I know this is a generic portrait, but this line here between the upper and lower lip is not straight. And it's also not just a smile line. There usually is a dip in the middle, and that can be a very important part of showing a person's likeness. So I want to encourage you to include that. And then the other thing I want you to think about is we are drawing all the way out here to the corners of the mouth. Okay, notice the lips though, they don't go out that far. So when you think about this line here, like I have to make my lips that wide, yes, that is where the corners of your mouth are. Now, you don't want to do banana lips. Some people do this, and they do this and this. So if you're going to draw your lips like that, yeah, it's probably not going to look correct. But again, we all know different people have different lips. So I'm going to start with that 1/3 line. Make a gentle smile line and then have it come up. So that is going to be where my upper and lower lips meet. The other thing I like to draw, and it usually, you can see it on most people, it's this little shape here that connects the bottom of the nose with the top of your lip. So I will draw, it's almost like a little bit of a tie shape, like a suit and tie. So I use that to help me figure out where to put the upper lip, how, and then it gradually tapers into like where the corner of the mouth will be. So there, and then the lower lip. Lower lips are usually a little taller than the upper lip. So those are my lips. So we're just roughing in those spots because those are areas you're going to look for proportions, and then you're going to compare your face or whoever you're drawing to those proportions. So does the person have larger lips? Maybe they're wider, maybe they're shorter. And that's where you get better and more skilled as an artist, being able to tell those proportions. All right, from here I want to make sure that you have enough space between your lips and the bottom of your chin. So what I do is I check with an eye length. So if I take one eye length, I'm measuring it with my pencil, and I put it up and down, I should have about that much between my lower lip and my chin. And you're actually going to have that over here and here too. So again, take that measurement, make sure I have that there. Looks like this side I need to give myself a little bit more of a chin. So on this drawing for my classes, I am fine for you to leave these guidelines. I especially do want these labeled because it's going to help you in the future when you go back to draw your own portrait. All right, now we're going to do the ears. So the ears, if we look at a reference and the proportions of the ears, we're going to take the eye line and the nose line. So again, this is a common mistake people will make. They put their ears way too high. But if we are looking straight into a mirror and we took a pencil and lined it up on our eye line, we would see that the top of your ear lines up with the middle of your eye line. So ears, and what I like to do, the ear, I start off with like a curvy oval-y thing, and then it does kind of follow the side of my head, which at this point is angling in, and then I do, so I call it kind of like a hot dog. It almost looks like it's a little curvier than that, but I use that. And that's really for this purpose and this drawing, that's enough of an ear and the detail. There are a lot of complex folds and cartilage in your ear, but for this drawing, this is fine. All right, we have ears. Now our neck. If we look at this drawing here, we see her jawline and we see her neck. What I want you to notice is that if I use that diagonal line, right, I would see her neck kind of connecting there, even though it kind of, if you feel where your neck connects to your head, it is back behind your ear. So we're going to use that. Often students do what's called the pencil neck, too skinny. You have, I think they say like an 8-pound head. So you need to make sure that your neck is wide enough. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to use a straight line that starts to curve. And then in the case of this drawing, your shoulders would actually be, the edge of your shoulder would be like all the way out here. You could fit a whole nother head on your shoulder, and that width is going to be where your shoulder ends. So on this drawing, we're just going to continue that out to the edge. So we've gotten pretty far, and now we need to deal with this bald head up here. One thing people will use is, if you can see a hairline, they'll draw a hairline. But it still seems, I don't know, odd, I guess. So it all kind of depends on what type of hair you're going to draw. What I want you to think about is that if you have bangs or if you have longer hair, I would start from your part. So you'd be able to see some of the part, and then bangs might swoop over here. The other thing is your hair does not lay flat against your head. So I always give myself or my drawings like a little bit of a floof. And this does make a little bit more sense if we consider the shape of your skull. It is more angular, I guess, wider up here and then a lot thinner down there. So I want you to kind of think about that area. As far as different ways to draw hair for this, if you want to do somebody with longer hair, draw a part. and then like their hair might extend. If you're going to do somebody with shorter hair, you're going to draw almost what kind of seems like, or is going to be the hairline. And I'll try to get more resources for you in the classroom or in the assignment so you have some choices. But you'll need a hairline, and you'll need distance between your eyebrows and your hair. So at this point, I'm looking at it, everything is pretty good, except I just feel like there's a lot of space out here, right? Like your head can't possibly be that wide. And it is kind of true because your hair covers that. So let's say if you think about like sideburns, like your hair would cover part of that, even if you have longer hair. So you can at this point, if you need to bring in the side of your, like where your face and your cheek is, so that and kind of give yourself a little bit more of a curve there, or draw the hair and then part of the sideburn in front of the ear. That will help. So that is the tutorial. Those are the general proportions of the human face. This is just a generic person, but we're going with the eye line is halfway down, the nose line is halfway down, the mouth line is 1/3 to 1/2. The width of our nose is one eye width, and then the mouth lines up with the irises. But I think the most challenging part is to get those 5 eye widths and divide that eye line into 5 eye widths. So that probably will take you the most time. No, it's never going to be perfectly symmetrical. And that's okay, because we're not either. So enjoy, and we will proceed on our next lesson.